reviewing last night's UCP frontrunners debate that was held at the rooftop YYC pub downtown here in Calgary. I was given the task of sitting there with a timer and a sheet, so I wasn't terribly much of a visible part of it, but I like to think it was integral. So to start with, the venue, though, was awesome. If you haven't been there, it's essentially a large rooftop greenhouse in downtown Calgary. There are bars on each side of a big, long space with a food section in the back, and it makes efficient service despite the place being packed, and it was with attendees. It's a unique spot, and I'd highly recommend it to folks if they're having a pint in downtown Calgary. Check it out. It's a good place. The stage, though, was somewhat small, and that's part of the reason that we limited the debate to 3 contenders. It's perfect for a band, but it would never have accommodated 7 people spread out in debate format. The only other downside was the occasional ambulances passing by and interrupting the debate. With all of us being essentially inside a giant tent, you do get a lot of peripheral noise from the outside. I mean, to pat our own backs, though, the debate went great. Aside from moderator Derek Fildebrand getting a little mixed up in assigning the opening statements, he maintained flow and order during the affair excellently, and it was very engaging. It was a good watch. There were no weird gimmicks, no sad trombones, no intervention cards. Questions were presented, and occasional extra rebuttals were allowed when a candidate one had signaled out another. While there were some shots fired, I think things remained relatively civil between the candidates, actually. I know it feels unfair to exclude 4 out of 7 candidates in an event like this, but there can be no doubt that having only the presumptive top 3 on the stage made for a much better debate and than the official party won, including all 7 candidates when they did that. It allowed for more questions and direct discourse to be covered. Now, with independent polling, I'll just cover it one more time. Brian Jean, Daniel Smith, and Travis Taze all are well beyond the remaining 4 candidates in support among the members. So nothing's impossible, but it's very unlikely any of the remaining contenders are going to fill that gap. Todd Lowen was in attendance. He was there last night. I chatted with him, and he was certainly well received by everybody. And when the subject of his ejection from caucus came up in the debate, all of the candidates on the stage made it clear he'd be welcome back, though they did make it clear they're also going to leave that to the caucus to decide. And Todd's a congenial, smart man, and if a 4th candidate would have been added to the mix, he would have fit in quite well. All 3 candidates, they presented themselves well and solidly. I mean, I didn't really feel that any single one stood out, not like that first debate anyways, and could be considered an outright winner. In the room, it was clear, I mean, in reading the room, the supporters were dominated. The room was dominated by Daniel Smith supporters. I mean, there were cheers and occasional boos. And again, it was typically cheers for Smith and boos for anybody being contrary to her. But Taves and Jean were both very well represented with supporters in the room as well. Now, in the official party debate in Medicine Hat, Smith was the clear target as she sustained attacks from every candidate. And last night's debate, I thought it was more Travis Taves who was more on the defensive. I mean, he's the clear establishment candidate, and he was facing off against basically 2 party outsiders. It was a tough line to straddle. Taves has to distance himself from the UCP actions that led to the ousting of Kenny, while he'd also been a senior cabinet minister during those years. Now, being a Western Standard debate, Ottawa versus Alberta, the theme was, of course, dominant. All candidates, of course, agreed that Alberta's getting a raw deal in Confederation and it needs to change. Smith stuck to and continued to defend her proposed Sovereignty Act, calling for the province to refuse to cooperate with any federal actions or policies that might be detrimental to Alberta. Brian Jean used the word autonomy generously, and that's the main theme of his campaign. And he often expressed we need constitutional reform in Canada and felt it could be achieved through the courts. He often made legal references and reminded the crowd a lot of his background in law. Taves took an approach embracing more negotiation and compromise. Again, that middle of the road, more of the same old as we've done, maybe strongly worded letters. He spoke on how things could be improved, though, by working with other provinces to bring about more united front when it comes to battle with Ottawa. Party unity, that discussion got tough, and that's where Smith was taken to task by both Jean and Taves for disastrous floor crossing in 2014 that arguably led to the 4-year term of the Rachel Notley government the following year. Jean and Taves didn't have the easiest job in presenting themselves as unifiers either, though. Taves is the establishment candidate in a party that just kicked out its own leader. And Jean took part in an extended campaign to encourage the ejection of that leader. I mean, he fostered a lot of division. It's easier to tear a party apart than to unify it. So whoever wins the race is going to have their work cut out for them. Now, firearms, healthcare, self-defense, free press, and abortion, yeah, it was covered, were all debated as well. I'm not going to break down into all of those or it'll take up the whole show. What I will conclude is with stating it was a very good debate with a lot of ground covered. If a person's undecided in this race, they can get a really clear picture in watching that debate of where the top three contenders stand on the issues. So the debate is in full. It's fully available on all of the Western Standard social media channels, and I suggest taking the time to watch it when you can. It's an enjoyable watch, and even as one cynical political watcher told me, she was surprised it was a 2-hour debate. The time actually flew by, and because it was engaging as opposed to being more droning than a lot of other past debates can be. So check it out on the YouTube channel, the Facebook. We have it on Rumble. We streamed it everywhere, guys, and it'll help you make up your mind, at least among those three candidates, on who you may want to support.